I don't have anything yet for tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday. Obviously, when things move or we have something to share, we'll certainly put that out there on the daily guidance. And obviously, there's some movement happening in Congress as well that we're keeping a close eye on. And so once we have more to share, we'll have more to share on that.
$50 an hour federal minimum wage. That's 7 times the current national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Can you explain how that would be economically sustainable for small businesses? You have 60 seconds.
First, let me say I owned and ran a small business for 11 years. I created hundreds of jobs, benefits, retirement benefits, also health care benefits. I know what worker productivity means, and that means that you have to make sure that your employees are taken care of and have a living wage. In the Bay Area, I believe it was the United Way, came out with a report that very recently, $127,000 for a family of 4 is just barely enough to get by. Another survey very recently, $104,000 for a family of 1, barely enough to get by. Low income because of the affordability crisis. And so just do the math. Just do the math. Of course, we have national minimum wages that we need to raise to a living wage. You're talking about $20, $25, fine. But I have got to be focused on what California needs and what the affordability factor is when we calculate the
affordability. Oh, but I forgot that the intro. I'm blown away by 50.
Hit it out. Creeping. Even creeping.
Go. Show where it's birthday.
Yeah, right. Unbelievable. Craziness.
You find me at the club. $50 an hour. You find me at a club.
Yeah, right. Until you see the Hennessy's $105 for a shot.
Yeah, let's go get a Big Mac at the dollar menu. Oh, it's the $20 menu.
Yeah. Of course, Steve has to mention meat during Lent. Welcome to News from the Pew.
Well, that's the funny thing. It's not meat. It's not a food.
A Big Mac?
McDonald's in general?
Eat it. I mean, if you put it in your mouth and eat it, it's technically food. I mean, even a piece of paper sound.
Oh, no, about meat.
Either way, it's semantics at this point. So, welcome to News from the Pew, where we talk about stuff on the internet. And I am your host, Rick Barrett. And I am joined by my wingman, the godfather of Catholic YouTube and alternative media, Mr. Stephen Cunningham, fresh off of the, we were both at the Carolina Catholics Men's Conference last week. A lot of good time. Great to see anybody that was out there. And we are going to be talking about some stuff that's happened since then. And believe you and me, there's been some stuff that has been happening. In fact, that you saw Jean Lesbian Pierre talking about how Joey B is he's just the smartest man ever, even though he's declining to take a cognitive test in his next health checkup. But because he doesn't need it. Yeah, right. Absolutely. He doesn't need it. So very interesting in that regard. But let's take this one at a time. Let's go with some political news here. First of all, everybody's been very upset, at least anybody with a brain cell left in, right, is what's happening on the border. And there have been calls to impeach Mayorkas about this and you know, what he needs to be held accountable for this. And yeah, so let's take a look at what's going on with that.
He's working hard for the drug cartels, and he's working hard for the radical left, because that is what his actions have produced. The White House and the Department of Homeland Security can put out whatever statement they want, but the facts are Alejandro Mayorkas has been derelict in his duty. He has not followed the essence of federal law. He has not made sure to secure this nation. He has followed Joe Biden and his terrible, reckless policy, and he deserved to be held accountable today, and we delivered that.
Yeah, you did. And now nothing's going to happen. Not a thing, Steve. And just another, what we have seen, though, and I'll toss it to you, is that impeachment, which was once a very, was almost, for lack of a, find me a better word, sacred thing. We don't do it unless it's absolutely necessary. Now it's nothing more than another political ad. Everybody's going to get impeached from this point forward, regardless of whatever. Left going to impeach, you're going to get impeached, everybody's going to get impeached. It's like the Oprah meme.
I was trying to find the Oprah thing. You get a car, I get a car, and you get a
Yeah.
car.
That's it.
You
I
get
mean, every
impeached, everybody gets
president
impeached.
from here on out is going to have impeachment somewhere within their term.
It's gonna be a call thing. Hey man, I got impeached twice. Yeah. You right? Was that one with the noose around the guy's neck? Oh, first
Yep.
time.
First time? Yep. I don't think I impeached once, loser. So it'll be interesting in that. Also, real quick, with whatever bill that was being funded for Ukraine, because we have to make sure that Zelensky has his money for the meat grinder, they actually buried a clause in it that said if any of the money was removed, let's say by Trump when he's in office, it triggers an automatic impeachment. So,
well, here's a clip of that bill you were talking about, the World War III bill is what they're calling it, right?
oh, nice.
Place for freedom, for democratic principles, for our future prosperity, then America must lead the way. And with this bill, the Senate declares that American leadership will not waver, will not falter, will not fail. Today, we make Vladimir Putin regret the day he questioned America's resolve. And we make clear to others, like China's President Xi, not to test.
By the way, look at those numbers at the bottom. Gaza, 28,000 kills, 68,000 wounded. What a ticker.
Our determination.
And by the way, did you see the one before? When it said the 50 bombings we'll get to that in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
50 while you were watching the game, 50.
Yep.
And we
50's going
send
around.
a clear bipartisan message
That's
of
the
resolve
number of the week.
to our allies in NATO.
Well, as you just heard, that was U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer. And in his remarks, he blamed Russia for undermining faith in America's leaders around the world. He didn't seem to note the many foreign policy failures that the United States has overseen. If one takes a look at Libya, one takes a look at Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq, it would make sense why some would doubt the capacity of American leaders and their ability to carry out effective operations and bring justice to the world. However, he didn't mention that in his remarks. It was all simply Russia that has worked to undermine the United States' credibility. Now, in his remarks, he called this bill that was just passed by the U.S. Senate, providing funding for Israel and Ukraine, as well as Taiwan. He called it the most important bill in history. He said that passing it was a huge achievement. However, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky strongly disagreed with Chuck Schumer. This is what the Republican senator from Kentucky had to say.
Open the champagne, pop the cork. The Senate Democrat leader and the Republican leader are on their way to Kiev. They've got $60 billion they're bringing. I don't know if it'll be cash and pallets, but they're taking your money to Kiev. Now, they didn't have much time, really no time and no money to do anything about our border. We're being invaded. A literal invasion's coming across our border. 800,000 people came illegally in the last month, and all they had time to do in the Senate was get the money, get the cash pallets, load the planes, get the champagne ready, and fly to Kiev.
Now, there has been back and forth debate between Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. Senate surrounding this bill for months. Now, the original bill did have funding for the U.S. border and border security. However, that funding was removed, and many Republicans were angered that it seemed that more funding is going to Ukraine than to protecting the American border and securing the safety of American citizens. Now, funding for Taiwan was added to the bill, but it went forward without funding for the U.S. border. Now, Republicans would have agreed to the bill much earlier if funding for the border had been given priority over the bottomless pit of funding they have piled on to Ukraine. However, that was not something Democrats seemed willing to negotiate on. And Democrats blame everyone but themselves for that. It's the result of a conspiracy from Russia. It's the result of treason from Republicans that they consider to be against the country, MAGA Republicans, etc. They don't seem to acknowledge that real failures of U.S. foreign policy and real revelations about the U.S. funding of Ukraine and the results of that money pouring into the country and what that has meant. They don't want to acknowledge that that may be part of what has delayed this bill from passing. The bill now has to go to the U.S. House of Representatives. They will vote on it next. And after that, if it passes the House of Representatives, which is certainly not guaranteed, as there's expected to be quite a bit of debate around it, just as there was in the Senate, then it will end up on the seat or the desk of Joe Biden, who will then have to sign it into law. So this is the process. Many expected this bill would pass a long time ago. It's taken quite some time as debate about U.S. foreign policy and continued funding for Ukraine escalates. Many in the United States just don't feel we should be spending lots of money on foreign wars around the world, piling weapons into foreign countries while the situation at home deteriorates, particularly on the U.S. border. So that's what's just occurred on Capitol Hill. The Senate has passed the bill. We'll be waiting to see what happens.
Coming to
So-
save the day.
Yep. Folks, that's how much money has been dropped on since the Russian invasion. That's a ridiculous number. I'm sorry. That's just absolutely, the words cannot even imagine that amount of money just being blown, just printed up. And let's be real, folks. All of this money here has been laundered back into the pockets of pretty much everybody in power. Nobody, like maybe what, $100 went to the people of Ukraine. Not much else. It all just got, laundered back to the defense contractors, laundered back to the NGOs, laundered back to all these other things. So the Ukraine war, and indeed, is just an absolute terrible thing. And we're seeing it in the fact that we're never going to recover from this ever.
Thank you, Charles Barkley. It's good
Terrible,
to have you on the program.
Terrible.
Yeah, man. I mean, Nordstrom, about Sweden stopped investigating Nordstrom, by the way. The Putin interview, when Tucker asked him, who blew that up? He goes, CIA.
Yeah,
They even asked us about talk about the interview right there, and the U.S.
We didn't even actually
media
have
going,
that set up. That happened last week. We didn't even think about talking about it.
No, it came on. It came on after we got done, and it was. We were texting back and forth, and I don't know if everyone saw Mr. Beast. He ended up scoring $250,000 off Twitter ads for a video he put up, and Tucker blew that out of the water probably in the count of views just on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then Putin was talking about how they were going to call for peace, but no one. It got
Nobody
pretty much
wanted
blown up.
Yeah,
but just the response by what's his face, who ended up getting promoted afterwards at the White House. Don't trust Putin. Whatever you just know because we're supposed to trust you bozos. Believe me, because we're at the White House. That guy's lying. We never lie here. No.
It is in sharp contrast after watching that interview with Putin, and whatever you think of him, I'm not canonizing him tomorrow, versus the politicians. He did a good job of at least presenting, folks. I'll put it that way. At least presenting that he actually cares about his country and is trying to put the best interest of it. Where outside of a minimal number of people at this point, nobody is in favor of the Ukraine war. Nobody's in favor of the money being spent there. Nobody's in favor of the endless, promotional trips by mini tank top Zelensky begging for more money, trying to frame this as like the spiritual successor to World War II, that if we don't stop the Russians now, they're going to cross the Rhine and that's going to be it. And, it's going to be the bombing of Britain again and World War II and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, folks, none of that is even close to true, because as Steve said, Putin made mention, and we talked about it on this show when it came up, that Putin has multiple times said, hey, we've done what we need to do. We've secured this region. Now, I'm offering terms of negotiation to just end this. And the United States is like, we got more bombs to drop, man. So no, we're not doing any of that. So it's Steve, talk about local, a country across an ocean is dictating what happens in Europe. Right? You have these United States dictating what's happening on the continent of Europe. And that's because the continent of Europe gave up its sovereignty as far as any kind of use of force, because they allowed these United States to be the global policeman. And when you let them be the global policeman, they get to tell you when you're fighting and when you're stopping.
Here's Kirby. Here's what I couldn't think of Kirby's name at the time.
You look at this and say the reason that the Russian army is on NATO, the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep, is because NATO has expanded rather than the Russians expanding. That, in other words, NATO has moved closer to Russia rather than Russia moving closer to NATO. Is that not an accurate way to look at this?
I think that's the way President Putin probably looks at it. It's certainly not the way that we look at it.
You don't think that NATO has expanded eastward toward Russia?
NATO has expanded,
Okay.
and the expansion has been a good thing for.
So the reason that the Russian army is at NATO's doorstep is not the fault of the Russian army. It's not the Russian army that's done it. It's NATO has moved closer to moved
I'm pretty
east.
sure it wasn't NATO who was ordering, upwards of 15 battalion tactical groups to within 10 kilometers of the border with Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't NATO who put little green men inside Ukraine to destabilize eastern cities.
I'm pretty sure that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. So unless that's changed,
It's not
Okay.
changed. But I'm
So,
pretty sure the movement by Russia is Russia's decision.
if NATO is moved east, the reason that the Russian army is closer or on NATO's doorstep is because NATO moved, not
NATO
because
is not an anti-Russia alliance. NATO is a
It
security.
literally exists because of Russia.
For 50 years, it was an anti-Soviet alliance. So
Where's
do you
the
not
Soviet
understand
Union
it? Do you not understand how, or can you not even see how the Russians will perceive it as a threat? And the fact that it keeps getting closer to their border, while their troops, I mean, the places where their troops are, you say their troops are, and may have been in Ukraine and Georgia, are not NATO members.
I'm not going to pretend to know what goes in President Putin's mind or Russian military commanders. I mean, I barely got a history degree at the University of South Florida. What I can tell you is that NATO is a defensive alliance. It remains a defensive alliance.
Fair enough, but it has moved
By the way, I'm a moron, but
Yeah,
believe
right?
me after I say this.
east, correct? I mean, that's just a
It has
fact.
expanded, absolutely.
Right, exactly.
But
And so
there's
the
no reason
reason-
for anybody to think the expansion is a hostile or threatening move. And we've been saying that throughout the last 15 years, Matt.
It's like you're moving closer to Russia. You're blaming the Russians for being close to NATO.
No.
That's exactly what Hegel
We're
said.
blaming the Russians for violating the territorial integrity of Ukraine and destabilizing the
Okay,
security
which is
situation
not a
inside
NATO
Europe.
member. Which is not a NATO.
I see to you
Other
on that
countries
point.
feel threatened.
Yeah. Other countries feel threatened. What about them? Right. That's like this. We are being run by idiots. We
That
are
was
being
shortly
run-
after that idiot got promoted, so he got expanded role.
Yeah, because he can actually form two sentences at this point, Steve. Anybody that's in the executive branch that can actually string a sentence together is on the fast track promotion, because the guy at the top doesn't even know what day it is.
Well, that was
So-
the funny thing about that's the funny thing about people responding after the Putin thing was, do we have anybody in government, was the thing, that could sit there for 2 hours and just talk like that and in coherent language? And everyone was like, someone asked me, I go, maybe Dr. Paul, but I don't think he's ever spoke for 2 hours before. But
I mean, maybe if
Brand
you're talking
might
about
be
the
able to pull it
entire.
off. Massey maybe.
I was about
but-
to say, yeah, Massey
Yeah.
could do it outside of that. I mean, Ted Cruz could talk for 2 hours, but it would just be annoying. He'd just be about
very,
himself.
very true. Very true.
You know,
But
he
the
could talk
bar is
for
very
2
low.
Yeah, that's why when I was a child, it would just be that for 2 hours. It would be terrible.
I mean, you got Biden would go for 2 minutes and it would just say, "You know the thing."
Yeah, come on, man. Yeah, like his talking is getting bad now. It's like deep breathing between each sentence. It's actually, like, the guy's, I pray for his conversion, obviously, but the guy is literally on death's doorstep, and it is just.
Well, Trump is
appalling.
not saying anything about his age because he's pretty much the same age. He's not saying anything about his mental capacity. He's focused on Nikki, I can't beat nobody, Haley.
Yeah, literally can't beat anybody.
You
Literally,
can't beat nobody. When nobody wins, now they couldn't write in Trump's name. There was no write-ins like Brandon had a write-in. Was it New Hampshire that had to write it?
Yeah.
he wasn't on the ballot, but yeah, Nevada he couldn't be on the ballot. But yeah, when nobody wins, that's when you got to say, you know what, maybe I need to rethink my future.
Yeah, I'm done. There's nothing here that we can do anymore. But speaking of that, old Joe got in front of the he declined to do an interview with CBS before the Super Bowl, which is supposedly a tradition that all presidents do. But he did record something talking about how expensive Oreos were and talking about, I couldn't believe how prices were up on snacks. And everybody was like, Joe, the reason why prices are up is because of you. You are the direct reason that prices have gone up. And yet, once again, no ability to see right in front of their face. The people in the White House recorded this, edited it, put the music on it, and then released it, not thinking 2 days earlier, they're like, oh, Bidenomics is working. It's great. It's the best thing ever. Everybody loves it. And then 2 days later, Joe's like, why can't my Oreos be cheaper? It's like, it's not Trump's fault that the Oreos are more expensive. I mean, I know you'd like to think that, but it's really not.
If you're anything like me, you like to be surrounded by a snack or two while watching the big game.
You're not even near them.
Buying snacks for the game, you might have noticed one thing. Sports drinks bottles are smaller. A bag of chips has fewer chips, but they're still charging you just as much. And as an ice cream lover, what makes me the most angry is that ice cream cartons have actually shrunk in size, but not in price. I've had enough of what they call shrinkflation. It's a ripoff. Some companies are trying to pull a fast one by shrinking the products little by little and hoping you won't notice. Give me a break. The American public is tired of being played for suckers.
He did this at like 5:30 in the morning.
To put a stop to this. Let's make sure businesses do the right thing now.
How do you do that? How do you record that, stage it, put the music on there, and have him be like, I don't like shrinkflation. This is bad. And then 2 days later be like, everybody loves, best economy ever in the history of the world. He's
just trying to get down to the local guy, trying to get you with the local Joe to like you. I was, oh yeah, he's right. It is because they are the bags. There's less chips in the bag. The bag's getting bigger, less chips.
More air, if that was possible.
Yeah, the bottle's getting smaller. Everything's getting smaller. The price going up. Ice cream thing. Yeah, you get the pint for $5 or whatever like that, or a gallon for $8 or $9, or maybe more, whatever it is. If you want the good stuff, it's even more expensive. So everyone's like, yeah. He's right. Oh, wait, he's helping drive that stuff up because of everything he's done. And then even though the corporations are tied in together, and it's a kind of a oligarchy in a sense, but, the corporations are in bed with these guys, and they have to do the same thing as back. It's Dutch door action in a sense. And but he's right. The thing.
He's right because he did it.
Yeah.
That's why he's right.
Where's that sticker? I did that. That
right?
Was all over the gas stations for a while.
Yep. I mean, you might as well put it at the front of the supermarket. All of this, I did all of this. This is my kingdom, like the Lion King. This will all be yours someday if you can afford it. So.
I mean, full disclosure. Before the true pandemic, a couple of years ago, the economy was going up like the Titanic, and then that was a good little excuse. Hey, what a quinky dink. We just had the sniffles come in for a change. Oh, the flu is gone, by the way. We didn't have that year. Wow, we can blame the economy. We'll just shut down everything, and then we'll just blame the sniffles on the economy on there. And we'll just, print up how many billions of dollars to get people for not working, a UBI up right there, and then just send it out to people. Say, what we won't pay, you won't pay this bill, but we'll send you about $700 just to light. Maybe it's $50 an hour for your minimum wage now for a few days. Don't do anything. Don't go outside or anything like that. Hey, you might get shot. Just stay inside. You don't ever go outside again. Order online. Do everything online. Never. You have shipping online. Food will come to you in the house. Boxes will be delivered from your house. You'll get a pizza guy a robot that will literally deliver the pizza to your door.
Well, not in Austin because that pizza, the Domino's one, gets jacked. Like,
they'll have that come out later. It's that I know that was. I remember seeing that at the beginning. That was the first season, the first the first city they wanted to try that in. It's kind of like Uber was doing that. The autonomous, they were doing that in somewhere in Arizona. Tempe, I think it was.
Tempe, and
Yeah.
Phoenix.
They'll eventually get there. I mean, we got plenty
Yeah.
of years to 2030. Yeah,
Yes.
the robots are coming as Elon has put the first chip in a human already, and he will get that out there.
He's moving X to Texas.
Moving X to Texas, so you can, that's which anybody with half a brain in their head should do to the future emperor of Texas down there and most favored nation's #1 fan outside of Brandon. They're kind of fighting each other to be who's. I love Israel more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. That the whole border thing is not about the border. It's about between Brandon and Abbott about who's more liked by the Israelis.
Yeah.
So it's actually very interesting in that regard how that's taking place.
I can't say Zionist because they're going to pull the plug on anybody that says Zionist. Because you see that they're going after anybody that's social media because you're anti-Semitic if you say Zionist, even if you're Jewish.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Nope. Can't be said. Cannot be said at all. But yeah. So you had the Super Bowl, the Stupid Bowl, which I'm proud to say didn't watch. Didn't watch one moment of it. Because I heard, don't worry, I heard enough about it in the last 3 days to pretty much know that I watched the entire thing. I know Taylor Swift got viewed 56 times or whatever on the camera. I know there was a Satanist in her luxury box. I know Travis Kelce pushed Andy Reid, and I know that more people think that the NFL is rigged now because of what happened at the Super Bowl. So that's pretty much how it goes in that regard. And
that was more than what I caught. I didn't know. I saw the drinking game playing that NFL memes on Facebook both out, but I was more bummed that I missed out on the Caitlin Clark game. And,
I know, right?
I got back home too late for mass, and they benched her for the fourth quarter because the coach wanted to have her break it at home and ended up losing because the coach did that. So just a bring that idea move.
Yeah, I mean,
break it. Who cares when you break it? Just break it.
Yeah, just break it.
It's all about getting the win. And
yeah,
I didn't watch the game. I actually forgot about it. And a friend of mine texted me up, "Hey, you watching this?" He told me about Harrison kicking the field goal. I got that, dude. Actually, not. I'm sitting there reading and not watching the game. Actually, just again, after my excuses beforehand, used to watch the Super Bowl every year. We had the sports bar. We had the mid-late 90s, and my brother and I were cooking every Super Bowl. So there was years we were there for it, and there's 300 people out there watching the game, and we were asking people, "Hey, what's the score?" Because we're flipping burgers or cooking chicken wings. You kind of see it through the window that we had, but it was literally so busy that you forgot the game was even going on. I actually watched the Denver Green Bay game on a DVD a year later because we didn't see it live, and that was the game. That was 1996 because that was when Carolina and Jacksonville were both in the AFC and NFC championships, and that was the first time I heard this is rigged. My dad talked about that because Carolina was playing Green Bay in Green Bay, and he goes, "That's not the same team that went 12-4. The defense didn't do anything like that. Kind of like what was it? Was it Detroit? They got away from their play. That what got them into the games when they lost. And San Fran stopped running CMC, who former Carolina guys. Kind of, I was hoping he was going to pull it off though, but no, I didn't watch. I just know of it. But when my Panthers got into 2003, after that, didn't really get excited for the game because then it becomes just another game that your team ain't in, and. I barely watched any of the Super Bowls then, and I clicked on the Bengal game. Grew up a Houday fan before the Panthers came to town, so they were in the game. Was it last year before last? So I caught 2 minutes. I think it was the end of it because again I forgot, and it hasn't been the same. So all the people get jacked up for the games. It's hard for me because after. I mean, the Carolina Denver game, that was when I thought it was rigged. But that was because we were dominating everyone. And all of a sudden, Peyton, who could throw a ball more than 5 yards, what? I was like, how's that happen? And after the first 50-yard pullback flag, I was like, this is cooked. But there's something else that went on. Is the human trafficking things that go on. We'll skip to the other parts afterwards. Let's pregame the game by the human trafficking stuff that goes in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 2013. So.
Yeah.
Said I don't want to leave you lonely.
Nobody talked about any of this coming up. I was actually shocked.
You can't,
Especially
you
with
can't
the
make
movie.
anything. There's nothing bad that happens at the Super Bowl. It's our national holy day. 750.
Well, especially the movie after the movie that came out.
Yeah, the Sound of Freedom.
Yeah. How did nobody bring that up during this week?
I bet you the NFL put a gag order on it.
Even I got a
they-
clip of we'll play next of the local news talking about it. I mean, you look online, nobody was talking about it. Most people were talking about how you had the puritanical guys saying, "Oh, it's a sin if you watch the game" and things like that, but nobody brought this up.
Days now until
Busy talking
F1
about Tay-Tay.
races into Las Vegas, transforming the Strip into a racetrack. In less than 200 days until the Super Bowl arrives in our city for the first time. Tens of thousands of people will come from around the country and around the world for those two major sporting events. But so too will those looking to profit from human trafficking, along with those who they sell. In order to stop these crimes and help survivors, local nonprofits are preparing now.
We just want to be as prepared as possible if there is an influx.
Signs of Hope is a nonprofit organization dedicated to those impacted by sexual violence and exploitation. They operate a 24/7 crisis hotline and provide hospital response for sexual assault victims. Volunteers serve as their advocate and their support system. Given the scope and scale of F1 and the Super Bowl, the organization recognized the need to ramp up and modify plans. During the days prior to and during these events, trained volunteers will be embedded with Metro to facilitate the fastest possible response to reports of human trafficking, offering survivors help and hope.
And any and all emergency services that they may need at that moment.
They have teamed up with the Southern Nevada Human Trafficking Task Force, which is made up of law enforcement and other groups. For the last several months, the two organizations have been actively planning, training, and preparing to address human trafficking situations that may arise during the events. Though volunteer advocates have worked and trained with officers from Metro for years for other large events.
We work with the Vice Section and the Special Investigation Units for human trafficking.
Signs of Hope will also provide a first responder 24/7 hotline for use by law enforcement, provide on-scene crisis response, coordinate, train, and educate appropriate event staff and volunteers on human trafficking, and serve as the main point of contact for all resources, support, services, and referrals. And if you would like to
But the point is, nobody talked about it. I never saw it in any sports show. Catholic social media, who's always about how bad everything is, they didn't bring this up once.
Well, they're too busy complaining about, you and
Tay
the fact that you
that too. It could have been me.
The fact that you were
triggered a few people. I was like,
questioning the heart and soul of people, Steve, as you always do.
We don't have a lot of hard. We got a lot of soft skinners out there. But anyways, was it Amazing Grace? She had a great little spill on things, talking about the origins of the owners being part of the mob, and then getting into the rig games because of Vegas. And remember, it's entertainment, sports entertainment, so you are getting entertained, and there's a lot of money involved. I mean, you think it's there's been
especially now with the gambling,
players
dude.
that got caught.
Especially now with the gambling.
That's the thing. There's many players that got caught with gambling before, even in the old days. I mean, and NBA's had a few. I mean, obviously baseball. It's harder to do baseball. You can do it. The whole thing about Rose was, we actually knew Rose. My dad played golf with him, and he asked him one time, "Did you do it?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But I did it to win." And which that's kind of like in his that's his mentality, win at all costs. So that was the 1990 World Series. The Reds beat the Oakland A's. That was Rose's team. They did it. They won because they hated Pinella. that was actually on a golf course when Pinella drove up in a, I think he said it was in his Beamer, onto the course, and Rose and Pinella almost went a sweet Lou, almost went, fist fight on the golf tee about that. And it's hard, the Black Sox scandal in 1919. So it's hard to fix baseball especially with the new rule, with the rules and all, since automatic bans from life and things like that. And then you still got hit, and it's hard. It's hard. It's anything to hit now. Even if you throw up a meatball, you still got to hit the ball. But football and basketball, you can, I'm going to miss this shot.
Remember, you had who was the ref that got caught betting on games?
Oh yeah, I forget his name, but that was 5-6 years ago. Was 10 years?
Yeah,
ago,
he was a long time ref. He was a long time ref with a lot of sway in a lot of games. Steve Jab, something like that. So I mean,
I was watching North Carolina and Clemson was playing. I used to watch college hoops, and towards the end, about 3 minutes left, Carolina's is coming back. Clemson's only beaten them once beforehand in the Tim Donnery. That's it, Donnery.
Donnery, yeah.
And there was a foul that was called that was just poor. And then there was a ball. They gave it to Carolina off a pass. That was like, I go, holy cow! Stevie Wonder could have seen that. And my wife goes, you think it's fixed? I go, hey, there's home cooking, and they're in Chapel. So there's home cooking, and you run off a second or two sometimes. But you saw Blue Chips. That was the movie back when Shaquille O'Neal was in his prime, and the one story was the star before they got the athletes he was shaved up. He shaved points. You look at the clock, see what. So you can get it. You get hot and cold. No one would think twice about it. But I wouldn't be shocked at all. I mean, it's like I said. She brings up the mob, brings up the gambling. Sure. I mean, it's too funny. The teams all of a sudden just aren't the same in the way they play sometimes.
I mean, you also watch the video, the highlights where it shows that Kansas City didn't get called for one holding penalty in the entire game. So it's kind of a little interesting how those calls go. You can't, just a little strange.
Well, like I said, the Carolina-Denver one, Cam, we're on our own 5, and he throws a 50-yard strike on a frozen rope across the middle, and there was a holding call, and we're all we're watching the replay go, where did that come from? Next play is the famous strip fumble that Cam ended up not falling on the ball. I think it was like 2 plays later, or the next play. We were like, that huge turn of events. And that was Peyton's last game. So, and I'm going, well, as long as you don't play somebody's last game, like Tom Brady's last year, you're not going to win if you're playing someone else's, a legend, one of the icons' last game. If you're not on that team, you're losing.
You are. Yep, exactly. And so that's
not that I'm
stuff.
bitter about that or anything. Not that I remember that at all.
No, not at all, bud. Not at all. I think you're taking it quite well. But the fact is that Super Bowl distracted you, and it distracted everybody the way it was supposed to, and yet, other things have still taken place, and it's interesting to see.
For example, if you weren't paying attention, there was bombings that were going on.
29 of Israel's war on Gaza.
So was it Rafah? Israel bombed it 50 times.
And throughout that campaign, Israel has pushed all 2.2 million people of Gaza into smaller and smaller spaces, making them homeless, crowding them over and over again, starving them by restricting food, and then bombing them. So here is a map of the Gaza Strip. Here is northern Gaza, where leaflets rain from the sky on October 13th, telling them to move south. More than 1.1 million Palestinians had 24 hours to leave this part of Gaza using the 2 safe routes laid out by Israel. Yet on the same day, 70 Palestinians using these safe roads were killed by Israeli warplanes. Israel also continued to bomb areas outside of the evacuation zone. Despite Gazans moving to this new safe zone, Israel bombed Al Bureij refugee camp on several occasions in October and early November. So now, Gazan residents needed to move from this area to here or further south. Then on November 15, Israel dropped hundreds of leaflets in selected neighborhoods telling the residents of Khan Yunis that they need to move further south. December 1st, more leaflets fell on Khan Yunis. They were told to immediately evacuate to shelters in Rafah as Khan Yunis was considered a dangerous combat zone. Then on January 3rd, Al-Nusayrat camp in the middle of Gaza, which was originally a safe zone, was also ordered to evacuate. Bearing in mind that civilians evacuating here would now have to travel through heavily bombed areas and were guaranteed no safety. As you can see at this point, there was only one safe zone left in Gaza, Rafah. Which brings us to February 12. In the early morning, Israel began heavily bombing Rafah and at least 67 people were killed. Rafah is the last safe zone in Gaza where approximately 1.4 million Palestinians are huddling for safety in makeshift tents. Later that day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the military to prepare to evacuate civilians from the southern Gazan city of Rafah. But where will they go?
Which is exactly, they just want to kill them all. So they brought them all in there and just bombed them during the Super Bowl. So nobody was really caring about it because they were distracted by the game. Most people had no clue that went on. LastAmericanVagabond.com was one of the only guys I saw that had it. They did a 4-hour show on that. So if you want to watch more of what went on that, and you see guys like, hey, what's the plan? We really don't have a plan where to move them and all. We just tell them to go there, and then we just bomb them. Go check out his site. I watched about a third of it. It's hard to get 4 hours in. But and then what happened afterwards, you probably have more information on that than I do. The shooting?
Oh, yeah. Well, they've what happened is that towards the end of the Kansas City Chiefs parade, gunshots rang out. And of course, instead of mourning the dead and looking around to see what had happened, we had immediate calls for gun control. And of course, this is on the back of the fact that the MLB, the NBA, all of these major league sports groups, NASCAR even, have all petitioned the House to pass the Undetectable Firearm Act, which was passed after Die Hard 2, when, if you've ever seen Die Hard 2, when John McClane's like, he's got a Glock 7, it's plastic, and you can't get it in your metal detectors. Everybody freaked out after that because of Glock was becoming more well-known, and they passed the supposed Undetectable Firearms Act. And so, just last week before the Super Bowl, Gun Owners of America said, hey, guess what? NFL, MLB, they're supporting gun control to take your guns away. Then you have this happened. Now, this is from the Daily Mail. 2 Kansas City Chief parade shooting suspects are juveniles who were having a personal dispute. You know what this is? Gang violence. This is gang violence in the city, in Kansas City, a major Democratic area. So no amount of gun control would have saved any of this. And of course, the left is like, there were 800 police officers there, guys. There were 800 police officers, and it didn't stop them. And everybody on the right went, yeah, that's why I need a gun, because you had 800 cops there, and yet these 2 guys still had this dispute. Now, this is a big shout out to Mr. Guns and Gear. If you're a gun guy, you know who I'm talking about. Mr. Guns and Gear put this nice little map up of gang activity in Kansas City. Oh, look at that. It's actually right where the parade route was. So the fact of the matter is, no gun control would have stopped any of this, because these guys don't listen to gun control. They don't observe.
Tell me Chicago's a utopian. It's peace, and there's unicorns dancing in the street with leprechauns pooping ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, they're pooping, but it's not ice cream. But the fact of the matter is, folks, that this was gang violence. It's sad. It's absolutely terrible. 21 people were injured. But the fact is, this was allowed to take place because Kansas City has been fighting the state of Missouri on open carry things, on all these other kinds of things. And you're going to have, with the increase of people from the South coming through the southern border and being bussed into these places or going to these places, the ability to get these things to take care of. This one, I don't know if this has been confirmed or not, but apparently this guy is an illegal immigrant. He's a suspect in custody right now. So there's all kinds of wacky things that are being attributed to him. But the fact is, he's been identified as one of the people as a suspect. Now, there was a press conference earlier today. They didn't name one suspect. That was the right down there. You know, they didn't name one suspect in this, but it doesn't matter because now the left is in unison talking about, oh, well, there were cops and all these things still didn't happen. So we need to just strip the guns. You're not stripping your gun. You're not taking away my guns. Okay. That's not going to happen because these dudes have long rifles. They have giggle switches. They have all the things imaginable. So you're not taking my Palmetto State micro dagger. Okay. You're just not doing it. And yet it's very interesting, Steve, that after this, the chorus of gun control got stronger and stronger, and it gave them yet another. Now, they'll talk about the Kansas City shooting, but they won't talk about the fact that because Gun Violence Archive, their main go-to, will take this gang violence attack and put it into mass shootings when other metrics, Congressional Research Service, when they do mass shootings, in order to be, it's got to be 3 or more people shot in a group with no other crime attached to it. Gang violence, robbery, anything like that. If any of those things take place, it's not a mass shooting. It is in the commission of another crime. But Gun Violence Archive doesn't care. This is absolutely the best thing that could have happened to the left going into campaign season because they're going to run this clip over and over and over again. And they're not going to tell you that it was underage kids that got involved in this, that were having a tussle, just like this time last year, there was a quote unquote shooting in El Paso. What was it? It was 2 underage kids in the food court having a gang dispute. But they don't talk about the actual commission of the crime. They just say, oh, it was another mass shooting and it's terrible. And if only we take the guns away from everybody, then guess what, folks? If you take the kids that did this, first of all, they're juveniles, so they shouldn't have firearms, right? That's the first crime that they committed. The second crime they committed is went into Kansas City, which I'm pretty sure as a city has their own gun zone ordinances. And I'm sure this parade was designated a gun-free zone by the police. Was that 3? 3 at this point? 4? Oh yeah, murder is illegal as well. So no other law that you could sandwich on top of these other ones would have stopped anything. You have a breakdown in societal order. That's why you didn't have shootings at parades 20 years ago in the 90s in Chicago, of all places, right? There were no shootings at the Chicago Bull parades. They had 6 of them. And so there weren't one shooting at any of those. And so, I
don't know, anybody gets shot going down to the South Side for a White Sox game, and that's the South Side.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the joke when you go to the State Fair of Texas, because it's located in the worst part of Dallas. The first ride is doing 80 miles an hour to get to the actual fair and find parking close to it. And then the last ride is driving 90 miles an hour out, so that way you don't get carjacked on the way out.
Dude, when I was doing Uber all the time, one of the roads I would take people off to get off I-70 in Denver, Colorado to get in downtown was MLK.
Oh, watch out.
And I would do it on purpose to people from Chicago or Atlanta. Oh, you're from Chicago? By the way, there's a lot of traffic right there. I'm going to bounce off there. We're going to get there about 15 minutes early. Oh, yeah, that's great. And then they see the sign. What road are you on? I go, MLK. He goes, get us off this road. This ain't your MLK. There's actually flowers on this one. No, man. Yeah,
it's Frodo from Lord of the Rings. Get off the road.
Oh yeah, it's you're on MLK in Atlanta. Run, dude. That's the thing right here with the sports guys. I sent you a text. You probably, I don't know if you saw it beforehand, but people that I never saw talk about this. I mean, you saw RG3 right there. Apparently had a big tweet about the gun control. He's been very outspoken the last couple of months about all kinds of different things. But Rich Eisen, did not expect him to be putting stuff out there. Kurt Warner, the old Mr. Kurt Warner from the Greatest Show on Turf, St. Louis Rams, the old grocery store bag clerk. He was even talking. Everybody in the sports, where it was 3 clips from First Take, or there was a clip we just scrolling through, was a couple sports wins. That's the big one. It's different when There was a school shooting in Atlanta. No one's talked about that one, but apparently it doesn't. I was like you say, it doesn't fit the narrative right here because I don't know if it's to desensitize or they could have more influence with this than a school shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Because
what the
now, if you subscribe to the Taylor Swift conspiracy with Travis Kelce, in addition to when they give him the endorsement, right? Now they'll say, Travis, what was it like when you were at the parade and those gunshots rang out? And then he'll start crying and his jab arm will start pulsing, and he'll say, it was just so terrible. And we've only had gun and blah, 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 and he'll start crying. And then Taylor Swift will write a song about it. And it'll just be perfect to continue the narrative because, folks, you have to realize the amount of money that Bloomberg gives and Soros gives to anti-gun organizations is in the billions. And they put a lot of money up to get their candidates into office, and especially to get old Joe into office. That's why I had the Office of Gun Violence Prevention be put in. That was a little bit of a kickback to them. They have to do something. I mean, they already got the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act done a couple of years ago after Uvalde, but they need something more for their money. They need something for their money. And it doesn't matter that every bit of gun control that'll be put out will never, ever work. So you can
see that clip with that lady grabbing the gun from the ground. I mean,
yeah, that's something you should never do. You should just stand over it if you need to, so nobody gets it. But don't pick up the gun, because guess what, folks? When the cops are coming, right? Unlike Uvalde, when the cops actually show up, everything is a hammer. I mean, everything is a nail. Everything is a nail. And if they catch you with a firearm, that lady's lucky she didn't get popped by the cops, because they don't know. I mean, whatever you think about them, they're, if they're following proper procedure, if they're getting to the shooting site, the first thing they do is find whoever has the gun, put him down. So in that situation, stand over it so nobody gets it. Please don't pick. I tell people when I do my LTC classes, I don't even pull out my firearm unless there's a direct threat. Like if you're at a Walmart or a Target or something and they're on the other side of the store, I'm getting my family and anybody around me out. I'm not pulling my gun out to address the threat, because if I come around the corner and I got my gun out and the SWAT team looks at me, guess what? They're not, and nobody's going to question it, because they're going to be like, we saw a guy with a gun.
Yeah.
And
ask about you later.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll apologize to the family after and tell your kid, don't be stupid next time.
But yeah, this got the sports world involved. So that's a gigantic population that they're putting a message out now to, because most times you go on, well, I don't know if many people were like this before. If you're just cared about sports and you're watching Sports Center 19 times a day, I used to do back in the day.
Oh, I used to religiously.
Never watched the news.
Nope.
So there could have been a shooting somewhere else. We'd have never even known about it somewhere. But now it's on. Now it'll be on ESPN, especially how woke they've gone and been they've been politicized for years now. This will be every half hour, every 15 minutes, half hour thing for the next few days. They're going to just bombard you with this stuff. So now that big population is going to just get thrown out, and it's either going to make people cut off ESPN or it's going to change some people's minds about this. I don't know. Maybe the whole people in Kansas City are going to go, I don't know. They're going to keep running that out for a while now. Like you said, with the Kelsey
interviewing the fans. They have
there'll be interviews, because they're going to be on Whoopi. They're going to go on all these interviews, and they're going to talk about that. I guarantee the night shows, the late shows. They'll ask Patrick Mahomes definitely about this, and other guys. And I mean, the poor lady got killed. I mean, got arrested for assault. I mean, no one's really talking. Every so often, someone brings that up, but she was a mother of two, Catholic lady. But yeah, man, I mean, the guys I've seen that they're talking about it ad nauseum. I'm like, these guys just talk about ball. I mean, and they're all blaming the weapon. None of them's bringing up the idea of the person, that you're not blaming the individual, not blaming anything like that. Just like you could just bring up, all right, ban knives. There's a knife. They say gun problem. Well, there's a knife problem in the United Kingdom. No one's saying about that. Or how's Chicago doing? There's like shooting every doggone weekend. I mean, dead every weekend. Nobody cares about that.
Worse. Baltimore is actually statistically worse than Chicago. And look at the state. If you were to look at Giffords or Everytown for gun control, It's one of the highest rated states for gun law safety. They have universal background checks. They have all the things you could dream of. Doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It disarms the population, but it doesn't do anything to stop the people that will, hey, guess what? I'm already breaking one law. I'm already robbing or doing this. Might as well just do it with an illegal firearm.
Yeah, and that meant, like, it goes back to how many criminals you know that obey the laws. You're gonna like, hey, I just gotta, you know what? Well, we thought about robbing this place, but we just can't it's a gun-free zone, dude. We can't do it with a gun. We gotta find something else.
Maryland has an A-. Maryland has an A- from Giffords. The 8th strongest state for gun control out of 50.
We just need honest criminals, and that'd be fine.
Yeah,
but I mean,
exactly.
you could bring up libido dominandi too. I mean, well, we talked about the trafficking, how much trafficking just went on. I mean, Jones's thing goes to unrivaled passions, brings unrivaled violence. You look at he brings up the argument of the movies. There's always a violation of the 6th and 9th commandment, and then incredible violence comes from it.
Or when, like Fawaz always says, when you lose control of your lower faculties, when you're, gluttonous on a Sunday, eating all this stuff and blah, 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 and sitting around and doing that. And there's nothing wrong with relaxation, folks, and like a family barbecue. I'm not talking about that. But when you're devoted, I mean, you could even say the Super Bowl is a violation of the 1st commandment. I mean, you saw churches, Steve, move up their services. We usually have a 5:30 service. We're going to have it at 2 p.m. today. So that way everybody can get home to the game. It's like, did what? No. We don't change for the Super Bowl. You have mass. And even if it's one person at the mass, it's still that one person is more reverent than everybody else.
I remember New Orleans during when the Saints were in, and they were doing Saints songs, the Saints, fight songs and things like that after mass. Everyone's dressed in their Saints jersey. I remember being to a mass in Cincinnati once when before a game, and it was about 10 people in jerseys beforehand. So I've seen that. I mean, obviously, back in the day when I wasn't big, my time card punching self, I would have seen no problem with that. Right. So sometimes, you look at these guys, all right, we can yell at them, or we can, try to help educate them through charity to bring them up, give them some gold for a change. That's the one thing somebody was complaining about online. And I mentioned that. I go, all right, well, you can do one or two things. You can go back in the corner and complain and yell about these guys and cry about it, or we could maybe try to educate these guys. Reach a hand out to them that, you can watch the game. There was a story about St. Anthony of the Desert, who obviously everyone knows about him. They have a story about being the father of monasticism out in the desert. I mean, the first one of them. And he gets a guy come out to him because he's heard about him. He's like, has this mindset of what this guy's doing out in the desert. And he finds him talking and joking around with other monks, and it scandalized the guy in a sense. And Anthony kind of brings him over and goes, all right, I'm not supposed to joke or anything. All right, shoot. You got the bow and arrow? Fire an arrow. Fire another arrow. Shoot it up, Scott. Fire another one. Fire another one. For like 10, 15 minutes, constantly going. He goes, you tired yet? Is string break yet? And his point was, if you're going 24/7, hardcore, even just, the meditating, praying type deal, things like that, you'll burn yourself out. You need some rest. And no, is watching the game sinful? No. Is watching 3 in a row, maybe 8 hours straight? Okay. Probably, if you're watching the entire day with pregame shows and all that, 12, 13, 14 hours, you may have an issue. Take a break. Or I used to have the NFL app thing that you could watch the game in 20 minutes. I loved that thing. Because I was out in Denver. I didn't get to see it live with the mass. The game would come on 6 hours after it was over, and you could watch it in 20 minutes because it eliminated commercials, all the riffraff in between plays. You just saw the plays. I think that was a brilliant thing. I just ain't watching because one, the team sucked, and two, I just didn't want to. I don't want to pay $100 for the team's terrible for a year subscription. So, it's terrible that what happened. But yeah, man, I think they're doing as they what's his face says, never let a crisis go to waste. This will be taken advantage of in a terrible way. Yeah, Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely it's awful. Nobody ever wants to see this happen. But there's a larger result. There's a larger reason for all this, and it's not guns. It
No,
could
I
be
mean Missouri. That don't forget that state was one of the first to vote for abortion. Uh, right off the bat after Dobbs' decision, we got our brains kicked right off the bat in Missouri, right? And we were talking about that right in the heart of the land. It was almost like set an example, and everyone's kind of like, "What happened?" Speaking of get out the vote type deal, this ain't get out the vote, but here's Greece. These guys were protesting against the LGBT mafia stuff and against gay adoptions. So there's tons of people out there for this over the weekend. You're not going to hear about that in Western media.
No, they might drone strike Greece just because of it. Oh, somebody drone strike Greece. Yeah, it was us. Because they're opposed to the new religion of America.
I don't know if you saw there was a Eucharistic procession. I can't remember what city it was, outside a Planned Parenthood clinic, and there's probably about 20 or 30 people, I think it was, out there for it. Where's the rest of the people that went to the march? That in that city, it was in Pittsburgh. And not, other people probably wanted to go to it, and one guy had reached out. But where's all the schools in Pittsburgh that went to the march there? How come you guys couldn't go to the procession there?
Don't mention that, Steve, because people get real hurt when you call out the sanctity of the march, and then you're like, well, where were you voting day? Well, it doesn't matter because the two aren't connected. Yeah, they are.
Just get the field trip in and go have those selfies and parties.
Go have some parties. Kind of like yesterday was Catholic Selfie Day. That's the second other day is at the march. Everybody has to make sure they're photoed there, so you can get your Catholic trad points. That actually goes to your Catholic trad points if you get photoed at the March for Life. So it builds up for you. It's actually really nice. So, what's the one with Jordan Peterson?
Oh, that's just the line about the
and how it gets to the point where
things get to terrible places one tiny step at a time. If I encroach on you and I'm sophisticated about it, I'm going to encroach 2 millimeters. I'm going to encroach right to the point where you start to protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. Then you're going to calm down. Then I'm going to encroach again right to the point where you protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. And I'm just going to do that forever. And before you know it, you're going to be back 3 miles from where you started, and you'll have done it one step at a time. And then you'll go, oh, how'd I get here? And the answer was, well, I pushed you a little farther than you should have gone, and you agreed. And so then I pushed you a little farther than you should have gone again, and you agreed. And if anybody's interested in this sort
of... Yeah.
I like bringing that up every so often.
Good old Jordan Peterson right there. The right's Kermit the Frog, but yeah, it is.
At least you guys are getting Georgia to come to Texas.
Yeah, you saw that with good old Brian Kemp, who rediscovered that he's actually a Republican governor. Decided that he's going to send, I think, like 5 guys. He's going to send like 5 people over. But it's actually very interesting that this was a huge deal. But this is the result of 24-hour news cycles. This was supposedly the biggest deal ever, that Texas was defying SCOTUS and the Bidens. And now everybody's like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. And whatever, it doesn't matter. You know why? Because the left shut up, because then they realized, dude, we can use this precedent when Trump's in office, or whenever Republicans in office. We'll just be like, hey, when Texas did it, nobody cared, so we're going to do it now too. And it's going to further signal the erosion of the Supreme Court. Not that Steve or I really care about the erosion of the power of the Supreme Court, but that's just one less institution people actually have faith in.
I like how Aloha did it the other day.
Now, I know you're celebrating that, but it also stomped on the state constitution of Hawaii as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the state thing, but they basically told SCOTUS, "Go, hey, you know what? Get out of the way. We're doing the state constitution." So even
no, they didn't say that, because they violated the state constitution as well. They said they didn't recognize it.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I'm talking. They're just going for the state one. That's where they told the federal one, "Hey, we're focused here."
Yeah, and then they violated it.
Yeah, well, still, I'm still going with whatever they're doing in the state, and if it's a state violation, it's a state violation. It has nothing to do with 2A and the federal.
Oh, I agree with that. Completely agree with that. But I mean, yeah, that's one thing that they're doing there. I just don't. Yeah, well,
Well,
that's
it's just
also a
another.
reason.
It was another spitball at SCOTUS.
It is another. You are correct. It is another spitball at SCOTUS, and it's another reason why the right and the 2A community is eventually going to get stripped sometime in the next 20 years. There's going to be an attempt to, because they've given up New Mexico, they've given up Hawaii, they've given up California, they've given up all these states in favor of courts. Courts will save us. Courts will save us. Courts will always strike down what California, New York, and Hawaii, and all Rhode Island and Delaware, all these unconstitutional things. And then they're like, all right, SCOTUS, we're telling you Hawaii, and then they're just like, yeah, no, unless Thomas is going to come down here and personally enforce it, I'm just not going to care.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not a great thing going forward. And the 2A community is not listening to me, because they're all still begging at the feet of SCOTUS to save them. There's three cases currently in front of SCOTUS where they're dealing with some kind of assault weapons ban. And I know a very popular YouTuber who said, will SCOTUS have the cojones to take it on? And I'm like, no, they're not, because the press, SCOTUS will never jump in front of a case. Look what happened in 2020 with the coughing and the election. Because it didn't fit the precedent and the tradition of the way SCOTUS does things, they're just going to be like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And the three cases that they're talking about still haven't gone through the federal circuits. So SCOTUS is going to be like, nope, we're not dealing with it until it goes the way that we want. Like the Cargill case that's finally being heard, that's 5 years in the making. 5 years in the making. So if you think you want to treat SCOTUS like some kind of some kind of fire drill or some kind of like emergency parachute, never. They will never be like that. So stop. All right, I think that's it. What?
Who you got for a cry room?
Wow, that's the first time Steve's actually ever initiated it, and not me. Steve's like, shut up, we're done. And that's fine. I'm okay with it. So my cry room is Democrats in Congress. And the reason they are in my cry room, let me see if I actually have to show this to you. I mean, I wasn't ready because, Steve didn't want me to talk anymore. But so Democrats in Congress unveil a new hip hop task force to tackle racial inequality. Solid job there, folks. I mean, at least they're doing something, I guess. But yeah, and awful. But my saint of the week, folks, is your fellow Catholic and legend, and that you all should say a couple Aves for him tonight, because he died tragically, very, very young. The one and only Chris Farley, folks. He was born today in 1964. Probably one of the greatest comedians of all time, in my opinion. And it's sad. It's sad that he had such a difficult life that he ultimately succumbed to it. But legendary Chris Farley, folks. If you're a Catholic, pray for his soul tonight. Today was his birthday back in 1964. He is my saint of the week.
I think his mom goes to Father Howman's Parish, St. Mary's, before he got transferred.
Yeah.
I didn't know that till then. But anyway, yeah. All right, I'll go with I guess I'll put RFK. The Trumpsters that are upset about RFK not running for vice president is he revealed that he could be Trump's running mate because his wife would not like it.
Well, that's a strong male that's a strong male leader right there.
I'll go with Halo for the Saint of the Week because of the commercial. I know everyone's going to go nuts because, you've had, Liam Neeson. Okay, yeah, granted. Mark Wahlberg, yeah, I get it. He's pro-gay. Liam's the pro-board. I get it. But the app, we throw the baby out with the bath water on that too. I mean, come on. I mean, I guess it's a good app. I haven't looked at it, but the video for that for the Super Bowl ad was really good. And I did hear about the He Got Us commercial, and which, by the way, during the thing, what they have 2 or 3 pro-Israel commercials, propaganda ones, which that was taxpayer money. You guys bought a commercial ad, by the way. Congratulations. It was terrible. For what, 7 to 10 million, 18, 15 million, depending on what it was, the price tag each. So there's a lot of propaganda commercials out there. No one does any real good ones. It's all pushing the message anymore. It used to be fun, like, Bud Bowl games or the What's Up, but like Budweiser commercial, things like that. The store were like, there was a theme to all of them. It was like a little movie commercial leading up. None of that anymore. It's always got to have some kind of, let's make it more lame and more gay, as Cartman said. But he got us one. Now, most people probably don't watch. I watch the local news. They have that. They've been doing commercials like that, not to that level, for quite some time. I mean, they're woke as anything. And I remember looking at their website about a year ago going, what in the world is this group? So yeah, when I saw that, I wasn't shocked at all. Now I know everyone, their brothers doing videos and talking about it, and congratulations, you're giving them more publicity. Do we know that we're giving them free advertisement by talking about them 24/7 and making videos of their video? But nobody was talking about the Halo app going, I don't know. Call me nuts. That was a good commercial. Guy walks in, puts holy water, is reverent. There was kind of like a chant in a sense going on. It was dark. But yeah, it's like, I forget about it. You can't even say anything good about that because we're just going to be mad. That's why we can't have good things.
Well, that good stuff doesn't get.
We're going to find that little bit that we're not going to like and just say trash it all.
Yep. Yeah, that's we've talked about before. Only negativity gets the clicks, bud. That only the rage gets the clicks. Yes. The Greta rule, as we like to call it. The Greta ratio. We used to have the Randy ratio. Now we have the Greta ratio. But yeah. All right, folks. That's it for this episode of News from the Pew. Thank you for hanging out with us. Please like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. And we will talk to y'all next week. Stay strong in your first week of Lent. I hope it is fruitful for you, and we'll talk to you then next Thursday. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.